Then I also text everybody. So I'm pulling let's say I want to target 2 to 5 acre lots that are $40,000 to $80,000 in 10 counties. I'll target everybody by text that owns those places, but I'm only going to send letters to the ones that are over 65. I had it under contract for 250 and I had a builder lined up to buy it for 750, literally a few months in. So I was like, this entitlement business is easy. I'm going to make $400,000 on this bad boy. And
Hey everybody, welcome to the King Show. I've got with me a guest here, very experienced investor, house investor and land investor, joining us from, well, the other side of the world, I guess we'll say, flipping land in the U.S. But man, this guy really is living the dream and making this work for him. I'm just going to introduce you to Colin Murphy, and we'll kind of get into his resume because it's impressive. Hey Colin, how you doing?
Hey, how you doing, Travis? Good to be on your show, man.
Yeah, absolutely. I appreciate you taking the time, man. I would say you're busy, but I don't think you're that busy because I think you you run your business very well. So you're not that busy, but your time is valuable. So I appreciate you jumping on here. Why don't you introduce yourself to everybody? Because what I was most impressed when we first met was the resume you have as far as the number of how much house experience you have. When we connected, it was about you're wanting to grow your land business. Mm-hmm. And you were kind of shifting out of houses into land. But you ran a very successful house flipping company for years. Tell us about that.
I did. I kind of consider myself a recovered house flipper. So yeah, I did flip houses for many, many years in the Tampa Bay area. Probably between 2014 and 2022, I flipped about 360 homes. You know, we kind of maxed out at about 95 a year in 2019 and then kind of wound it, slowed it down after that. And you're right, like I do value my time very much, but I've always been a kind of a person where my freedom of time and location and money are all very important. So I'm not just in it to make as much money and keep myself as crazy busy as possible. It's always my business moves at the pace of my life, but I'm a very kind of curious person. I've been involved in real estate for 20 years, started in Florida real estate in 2008. And prior to that, I was selling in about 12 or 13 different countries. I sold real estate across Eastern Europe, Central and South America. I had a business in Dublin. I'm originally from Ireland. And I had a business in Dublin selling real estate, overseas, emerging market real estate to Irish people. But that business model went belly up in the 2008 crash, which, you and I are old enough to remember. And we have a few wounds from.
Absolutely.
I certainly am. And Florida was my savior after that crash, when that previous business model selling in all these exotic fun countries basically evaporated overnight. We pivoted to Florida, where we were able to kind of latch onto these discounted condos. You might remember a lot of builders made money converting apartment complexes to condos and kind of selling them individually after putting some paint and carpet on them. But
Now, where were you living at that time, Colin?
I was dividing my time between Dublin and Madrid. So it was still very much remote. And we initially negotiated prices on these condos and acted as an international marketing agent to kind of sell them to British and Irish buyers. And we did that for a few years. And then my business partners at the time, they relocated to Florida, I think in 2010 to St. Petersburg. And we just kind of scaled up the business and got very, very good at promoting condos to investors, international investors and later to American investors. But I've kind of found myself where I'm doing these big pivots every 5 years. And a big one was in 2014, where we decided to stop promoting other people's condos and instead just start buying our own real estate. So we started kind of buying and fixing up houses ourselves back in 2014. And I moved, myself and my wife and my 2 kids, we moved from Madrid to Tampa in 2017 to scale that flipping business, where we used to do kind of 25 or 30 a year, after we moved over, it got bigger and bigger, 50, 60, 70, 80, 90 a year. And obviously most of that, probably 80% of that was because the market was just booming. And all we were trying to do was keep up with it and kind of design systems and processes that could keep up with it. And once COVID hit, firstly, I was a bit burned out from kind of buying 6 or 7 houses every month and I was doing all of the buying, all of the selling, all of the private money. I was spinning a lot of plates. I wasn't like project managing the renovations, or I wasn't doing the transaction coordination, but I was, selling a lot of houses to a lot of out-of-state investors who were high maintenance. And I got a bit burnt out just as COVID hit. And I just decided that, myself and my 2 business partners, we had different ideas about how COVID was going to affect the real estate market. And 5 years ago, nobody had a clue what was going on. It was a little bit Armageddon because the whole economy around the world shut down. So I just said to the guys, listen, we've got different ideas about what to do. Let's just slow down. Let's stop. Let's sell what we've got in common, sell, close the flips that we've got going on, sell the rentals we have in common, and do our own thing. And it actually was quite amicable, despite all the craziness. So I wanted to do something different. So instead of kind of flipping 8 houses a month, I took a 3-month break, and then I started doing one a month. But I wanted to move back to Spain, so I needed something else that I could do. And renovating houses on my own is not very realistic. I mean, you can do it, but then I heard a podcast where somebody was talking about flipping land, and I just had a ding, ding, ding went off in my head. I think it was Alicia Jarrett was on a podcast, maybe Ori Tipster, and this Australian lady was flipping land in Florida and kind of offering these marketing services to help support it. And I just hit the ground running. I figured out a few basic things by myself, and then I got on to you, and you helped me a lot get up and running as well. And I haven't looked back since. So I pivoted to land. I think I sent out my first mailing campaign in March of 2021, and did my first deal in September of 2021. And
when did you move back? When did you leave? So because that's a big commitment to move your family over here to Florida. Obviously scaled the business up. It sounds like 3x or 4x with the houses you're doing a month by being physically in the state you're flipping. But then when did you move back?
We moved back 4 years later. So my kids did 4 years of elementary school. My wife's an accountant. She got a job with Tech Data. It's a big company in Clearwater, Florida. So it was a really good family experience. I mean, there was obviously stresses. I mean, I've moved countries on my own lots of times, but moving with a family is a whole other thing. It's a whole other level of stress and complexity. I'd recommend that people do it, but be prepared for a stressful first year. And by extension, don't just move countries for a year, because it's too much work. If you're going to do it for a few years. So we did a 4-year stint in Florida where business was great. And my kids all came back with an American accent, which they still have. So they don't speak with an Irish accent like me. They sound like Florida kids. But yeah, 4 years. So we moved back in July of 2021. So I've been back, almost 4 years now.
Yeah, and I think it's natural to have some transferable skills and from houses to land. But I was impressed, Colin, when you connected with me, kind of looking to scale up your business. The foundation you had already built on your own without going through. Most people, take some courses, and they take 1, they take 2, they take 3, right? You kind of got to fill in the gaps and get to the point where you feel comfortable. But what'd you tell me? You kind of parachuted in with guns blazing.
I kind of did. I mean, there's a surprising amount of transferable skills. You might not think that kind of buying a house and kind of managing roofers and plumbers and electricians and permits and flooring is transferable to flipping vacant land. But, my part of that, growing that business, which was sourcing the land, doing the due diligence, calculating resale values, calculating profit margins, figuring out how to allocate the capital, figuring out what marketing to do. A lot of those skills were directly transferable. And because I'd been used to spending hundreds of thousands of dollars a month buying houses, I wasn't as kind of cautious as someone might be who's never done any real estate deals of buying these lots for $20,000, $30,000. I mean, I didn't just jump in and start buying high-end 6-figure lots. I started really small, in one county that I knew pretty well, and I kind of targeted residential lots in the kind of $10,000 to $20,000 range, and just kind of slowly worked my way up quarter by quarter. So while it kind of seemed extremely fast, it wasn't reckless. I mean, there was a purpose to it, and I used existing systems for tracking purchases, closings, money in, money out, bookkeeping. I mean, there's a lot of stuff that was very easy to kind of move from more complicated business to a less complicated business.
No, that's what I would say is I was really impressed on your own, what you were able to accomplish, but it's not like real estate was new to you. It's just a different asset class. But there are some nuances, right? Valuing, wouldn't you say that valuing land is much different than valuing houses?
Yeah. I mean, it is for sure. I mean, that's it. In some ways it's easier, because if you're looking at houses, you could have a couple of houses on the street that were built in the same year and have the same floor plan, but one of them could be very modern on the inside and the other one's not. You got to calculate how old's the roof, what's the plumbing like, what's the fixtures and fittings like. So you really got to dig pretty deep into valuing number 3, Main Street with number 4 Main Street. But when I've got a real estate license, so I'm able to look at the MLS, and that's very handy for comping. But if I've got a subdivision where I can see that a 2-acre lot is selling for $50,000 to $60,000, I know that if I get it for $25,000 or $30,000, it's unlikely that I'm going to, make a big mistake doing it. It's not
Right.
like there's going to be hidden problems with the sewer or something behind the walls. I mean, you need to know, you need to get your zoning right. You need to know, you need to look at the flood zone. You need to make sure there's no wetlands there. So there is a series of checkbox items that you need to look at, which you're really good at teaching people. And I did kind of take a lot of that stuff and apply it. But once you go through those 6 or 7 things, the comps are generally pretty easy to get to. I mean, assuming you're not looking at some 75-acre tract and there's nothing else similar being sold. But if you're looking at kind of 0 to 5-acre lots in residential subdivisions, which I was doing, it was relatively straightforward, which, I mean, and obviously I wasn't, I used to buy houses in auctions where foreclosure auctions where you bid on them at 11 o'clock. They take 5% if you're the highest bidder and you have to pay the full thing by 5 p.m. That's kind of pressure. Whereas with a lot, you're sending out these offers by mail or by text, you get it under contract and you generally have 3 or 4 months to decide if you're going to buy it or not. And you're generally not putting down any hard money or any earnest money deposits. So again, the risk for me was quite different. That's not to say you can't lose money in mistakes or you can't lose. There's not lots of people making rookie mistakes, but for me, the risk profile was quite different. To go from kind of spending $150,000 between 11 and 5 p.m. on a house to kind of putting a $30,000 lot under contract and then having 3 or 4 months to double check the zoning, the types of properties you could build, the wetlands and so on
I would agree with you. I think there's just a lot more grace, right? There's not the urgency of the situation of the seller. There's a lot more grace in your valuation. If you are a little bit off, there's room because we're generally capturing so much equity. Like from a percentage, perspective, that you're right, even if you are off a little bit on your values. I think a lot of people that come over from, house wholesaling or house flipping find that and are surprised with that part of it, how there's not that, like, I got to be on their doorstep or at the, the auction steps, same day type situation because there's some urgent situation driving it. The feedback I've got though, from a lot of the guys that were like flipping or wholesaling at a high level was, there's a lot of these great things with land that, we have more time, we have more grace. There's not these situations, but getting these contracts signed, right, Colin? Like a lot of people with the houses, it's essentially you're sitting down at the kitchen table or knocking on the door, and there's a lot of opportunity to get the darn contract signed and get it, right? So sometimes with land, that's the feedback I've had for house wholesalers, right, is they go, I'm getting some verbal yeses, but getting that contract signed, because a lot of these people have owned land a long time, maybe don't have email, they can't do DocuSign, right? So getting that contract to them was kind of just a nuance. Like they said, I've never had an issue with it. It was getting a yes was the issue, right? But getting the contract signed wasn't hard. So I'll just point that out. That is something that house wholesalers have told me.
You're right, and the demographic for land sellers is older. I mean, I think the average age of the person I buy from is 70, 71. Yeah. So that wasn't the case with the houses. Generally, they were, average age was much younger. And anyone who's been in land a while will know that it's harder to get contracts in 2024, 2025 than it was in 2021, 2022, where you could send out 3,000 letters and you'll get back a bunch of contracts if you're lucky. Now it's much harder. You got to work a lot harder, and you got to be much more subtle with your marketing. You got to have multi-channel marketing. I mean, we could talk about that all day long, but it's not as easy as it used to be,
and I think just being like honest and being open, like, and sometimes you got to buy a little deeper, right? In these markets. You know what I mean? You got to pay a little bit more than you're used to at different price points, right? I think that's something that you did really well. To share people a little bit of background, Colin, I don't want to get numbers wrong, but I want to say, you were probably at 300K ish or something a year, 1 or 2 years into your land company. I feel like you're already at like 300 grand a year when you started working with me, and we said, hey, the strategy you and we talked about, I kind of shared, I said, here's kind of some of the plays in the playbook, some of the strategies I like that are unique or different than just your basic countywide approach. And the one that you said to me that really resonated was, hey, let's get intentional. I talked about portfolio owners and targeting duplicate or portfolio owners. And I feel like you recognized that was a play that you could exploit, right away. And rather than saying, okay, Travis, I want to test all 7 of your plays in the playbook, you said, let's go all in on this portfolio one first.
Yeah.
right?
I loved it. I mean, that was an idea that resonated with me because like you just said a few minutes ago, it can be hard work to get one person to sign a contract to sell you one deal. So if I can target people that own 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 lots and
Yeah.
effectively get them to sign one contract to sell me 8 lots, that's a huge weight off my mind. That's terrific for my inventory to kind of have a look. Because at the time, inventory was selling really fast. Most things
Yes.
would sell in like 30, 40 days. So if I can get my hand on like 4 or 5 deals in one phone call, that was amazing. I mean, I had a few of those portfolio deals where people were selling me individual lots, like 5 or 6 of them that had profit margins of like $30,000 or $35,000 each. And they were all like the same kind of lot. So I only had to do due diligence once. And then you can either market them together or market them separately. But like you said, it's not that hard to pull a list of people that own portfolios to send a certain type of letter saying that I'm interested in buying your portfolio of lots, which again is music to the ears for a certain type of buyer that will think, oh, so somebody can take all of these off me in one go with cash and close in like 40 or 50 or 60 days and send me a notary and I don't have to deal with realtors and sell them one by one. I mean, for a certain profile of buyer, that was terrific. So yeah, I love that idea. And I made several $100,000 just on that portfolio strategy alone over like a 12 to 15 month period.
Are you suffering from small deal syndrome? Struggling to close the big ones? You're not alone. Many investors feel inadequate when stepping up to larger deals, but there's hope for you. Small deal syndrome affects countless land investors, leaving them stuck fishing for minnows in a red ocean. Instead, imagine reeling in the big fish in Travis's blue ocean of big land deals. Introducing Land Boss Coaching, the ultimate solution for land investors ready to achieve big results. Our program helps you overcome hesitation, fear, and limiting beliefs so you can step up to the big leagues with confidence. With Land Boss Coaching, you'll learn to tackle bigger deals confidently. No pills or gimmicks, just proven strategies to help you perform at a higher level. Whether you thrive in a group setting or prefer personalized guidance, Travis King is here to help you unlock the untapped goldmine of flipping big land deals as a blue ocean investor. It's time to make your move. Leave small deal syndrome behind and perform like the land boss you were meant to be. Don't let another small deal leave you or your partner disappointed. Visit travisking.com today to explore our group coaching program or inquire about one-on-one coaching. Remember, the path to bigger deals and greater success is just a click away. Visit travisking.com and start your transformation today.
Yeah. Well, the main thing though is like you immediately implemented it, right? It wasn't like I shared it. You said, all right, Travis, I hired you for coaching, right? I'm not just going to be like, yeah, that sounds like a good idea. I mean, what I would say to give you credit on your part is you took action. Like you said, okay, like here's my counties that I want to focus on. We said, let's start where you already are, the markets you already know and are established, and you know what things go for, what they sell for, and let's target those. But credit to you because you got 10,000, units of direct mail out the door quickly, and you started getting the phone ringing, and you started, not just closing and converting portfolios, but kind of getting ones in the pipeline that you could work, right, and build that rapport, and kind of ones that maybe weren't immediate yeses and take longer to close. But yeah, I would say you took action quickly on marketing. You converted, but then you stayed working those leads. And I think that's something a lot of people call them, well, they'll market, but the follow-up, right, isn't there. Yeah. You had a really systematic follow-up, and then even doing a second and a third campaign, I would point out, like to people, right? You had a very strategic, like mail drop dates. My second campaign drops X days after first campaign. My third campaign drops Y days after that. And I think that immediate action and then that consistency on your part played a big role in your success of this strategy.
It is. It's key. I mean, and I would say to anybody that's, let's say your budget is pretty small. Let's say your budget's $3,000 and you have enough for 3,000 letters. It's much better to send 1,000 letters 3 times than 3,000 letters once. And do it when you've got, test that your phone number works, test that you've got a follow-up sequence so that when someone rings you, goes into a CRM, that a VA is sending them a message or scheduling a call for you. So you need a certain, sequence of events to maximize your chances of getting those deals. Because, if you're just waiting for something to fall into your lap, I mean, every now and again, a good deal will fall into your lap and you it's very hard to mess it up. But if you really want to get 10 deals out of a campaign where most people are going to get 2 deals, you really have to have those systems and processes in place, and you need to have multiple letters being sent to them. You need to be, working those leads is more important. You need to put more effort into charming the portfolio owners than you do someone who owns a small lot. I mean, you just need to put more effort into it and more personal touch, and just emphasize, well, I'm the owner of the company. It's my money. You can deal with me directly. Here's my cell phone number. I'm very flexible on what you want to do. Very happy to tidy up any title issues. If you own these with a brother you don't get along well with, just give me his number. I'll give him a call. We'll sort something out. Yeah. We'll send separate notaries. I mean, just make it really difficult for them to say no. Make them want to do business with you, that this guy seems so nice and so competent that I'd be a fool to try and sell them to anybody else. You need to try and learn those skills and implement them.
And I think that's a mindset shift for some people that are kind of, you get in that rut of when you're targeting all these single parcel owners. You really do try to build like this system with all this automation and follow up, because it's a quantity in a volume game. And when you switch to targeting portfolio owners, it's, yes, you need to have like a systematic, a process and a follow up, like, but it's more, it moves from like transactional to like relational. And in my opinion, our success has been like that, where we don't have like a 2-call close with portfolio owners, is what I'm trying to say. You know what I mean? It's like,
I mean, if you're lucky, then great. But
if it takes 7 calls, that's fine, right? It's more about, like you said, that they want to sell to you, right? Because we're scooping up so many parcels in one transaction that we don't mind, kind of playing that long game.
No, and then when they're ready to sell to you, better have your ducks in a row and have the money lined up to close on those, because they might not want to wait 4 or 5 months, the same as other people. You might need to just go in and buy those quickly,
That's a good point. And that's, I tell people, the money thing, it's like, if it's not, you're not self-funding it. It's the whole dig your well before you're thirsty, have the money lined up. And the other thing I tell people is, hey, don't harpoon whales for fun, right? So don't go out there and target portfolio owners that own 100 parcels or own $20 million portfolio if you can't take that down, right? Really, like, let's target portfolio owners that make sense
within a certain price range. I mean, you shouldn't be targeting people that own $1 million lots if you're getting started. You're wasting your direct mail, because it's unlikely you're going to come up with that money or will want to do it, straight off.
And a lot of the times, the best, when somebody's starting out and going, hey, how do I target portfolio owners? I usually say, like, look at your past sales. What's like your average lot size? Do you have a couple huge subdivisions you work? Or let's start with like those type of portfolio owners of your exact product type you're already used to, right? Versus just looking for portfolio owners in general. And I think if you start in the market you're already in, and then you focus on portfolio owners that have the same land parcel sizes and values that you're used to working in, you'll have a lot more success versus accidentally, harpooning those whales, and you have these people come back that have 20 parcels that are each worth $1 million, and it has nothing to do. It's not congruent at all with what you're already doing.
Yeah, you need to use your head about what's working. And if you're lucky enough to have a few dozen deals under your belt, it's worth an hour or two of your time doing an analysis of those few dozen deals and seeing. It's likely that like 80% of your profit came from 20% of those deals. So like, look at where that came from. What were the characteristics of those deals? I remember in my case, it was 2 to 5 acre lots that had sales prices between, I think, $40,000 and $80,000. I doubled and tripled down and so I go, okay, I'm going to stop targeting all these sub $10,000 lots. I'm going to stop targeting $100,000+ lots. I'm going to focus my chips on targeting 2 to 5 acres, $40,000 to $80,000, but in 6 Florida counties instead of 3 Florida counties. And just expand that way. And then you get more of the deals that I tended to sell quickly, that tended to generate an oversized amount of my profits. And again, you're just being very efficient with your time. I mean, what I didn't like, for example, I had some lots that were $80,000 lots, but they were quarter acres. And for me, they took ages to sell those little lots. I mean, some of them were beautiful by the water, but they took maybe 100+ days to sell those. Whereas the 2 to 5 acre ones in the same price range, they flew off the shelves. So it made sense for me to ignore the ones that took a long time to sell, focus more on the ones that sell quickly. And you can even get more aggressive in your pricing. You don't need to be at 50 cents on the dollar if you know they sell really quickly. You can go much higher than that if you want, because the volume will be there.
That brings up a good point, Colin, because there was something I like that in your business, and you're one of the first guys that I coached anyway, that had this approach where when I talked about, hey, what's your typical like offer price percentage? And when you're closing, how much are you buying these properties at, and at different price points, what are you paying? And you'd said, hey, at the time, and this might have changed, but at the time you said, hey, Travis, I like to make, I think it was 30 or 35 grand a deal. And like you said, I don't really care if I pay 45% or if I pay 65%. If I know that this property will sell within 90 days and I can make that 30 or 35 grand, like my ROI doesn't matter. And I might be paraphrasing a little bit there, but that's what I recall our conversation was, where you basically said, if I make 30, 35 grand a deal, I'm not that concerned.
I think you're right. And I still more or less apply that principle. I mean, sure, if you're buying something that's worth 30, I mean, there's no point in paying more than 15 for it. It's just too much work, and you've got closing costs on both sides and all the rest of it. But if something's worth 150 and you're only offering 70 or 75, you're not going to get too many of those. I'm generally, if something sells quickly and I know it does, and I know I'm very confident on the comps, I'll buy a $150,000 lot for $100,000 all day long. I'm happy with a $50,000 gross margin, which is probably a $43,000 net margin once I'll, deduct a few like survey and photos and closing costs and whatever, maybe commission on someone who brings me a buyer. So I'll do that. And even a couple of the deals that I've put under contract recently were similar. I mean, I've one on it's worth 92, whereas before when I started, I might have offered like 45 for that. Like I'll pay 55 or 60 for it now, have it under contract for 58 and it's worth 92. Another one that's worth 62, I'm buying it for 38. Another one that's worth 380. I think I'm buying that for 190. So that's an exception to the rule. That's going to be a great deal. But generally speaking, I'll pay 60 to 65 cents on the dollar if the profit margin is high enough. If it's $150,000 lot, I'll buy it for $100,000. I'd rather do that than have like 4 or 5, $30,000 lots that I'm getting for $12,000. I mean, it's really about how much money you can make in a year, isn't it? I mean,
well, and I think that's where like slowing down and like you're saying, looking at the numbers and looking at it and saying, what would I rather do, right? What makes sense? Should I move all of these $30,000 parcels or make 30,000, on a deal? But I think that moving up and being willing to self-fund and pay like 65%, like you're saying, the conversion rate just skyrockets.
Yeah. I'm generally happy doing 25 or 30 deals a year. For me, that's comfortable. Like 2 or 3 a month is great. But the only difference between 2 or 3 a month now and 2 or 3 a month 4 years ago is that the sales prices are much higher and corresponding the gross profits are higher. I mean, the margins might not be higher, but the balance sheet, what's on the P&L is higher. And that's really what counts. You're still doing 25 or 30 transactions. You're organizing 25 or 30 closings and photos and contracts. It's very easy to do that with a couple of VAs. But if you're selling $200,000 lots instead of $30,000 lots, that can be an extremely profitable business.
Well, and how about though, capital wise, like how do you keep up with are you hamstrung by capital, self-funding everything and buying everything cash, like at 65%? Do you find more opportunity than capital?
At the beginning, I was self-funding and I had the luxury to be able to self-fund because I'd flipped so many houses and I'd closed down a business and we obviously had a bunch of cash afterwards. So I was buying cheap lots that were selling quickly. So it was easy just to fund and pay the 20, 30, 40,000 and get it back, 40, 50 days later. Nowadays, I have a policy, whereas if the kind of purchase price is kind of below $80,000, I generally fund it with a line of credit. I have a line of credit from Chase Bank that I'll fund it with those. So there's no mortgages to deal with. There's none of that. And if it's kind of the sales price is above $80,000, I'll fund it with private loans. And again, most of them are similar. Some of them are the same private lenders that I've worked with for many years in the house flipping space, which are not necessarily professional money lenders. And I know you've got a professional money lending business that you're an owner of. So it's more just kind of wealthy business owners, that live in Florida, that earn high 6-figure salaries, that generally that are willing to lend me, $300,000 to $500,000 each in a float. So I kind of have a go-to, like 6 or 7 guys that can kind of lend me probably up to about $2 million at one time. And that's a fortunate position I've been in, because I built those relationships very carefully over a number of years. I make sure I meet them when I travel to Florida. I make sure I send them Christmas hampers to keep them sweet. I make sure I remember their wife's names and their kids' names, and make sure we go out for nice meals whenever I'm in their area. So I build those relationships carefully, and they've been of tremendous value when you're, because like if you're buying, like I'm buying a lot for $190,000 in a few weeks. I mean, I don't want to fund that out of my own. I don't believe you should fund the deals out of your own cash on principle. I think the money you make in your operating account should pay like your salary, your staff salaries, your marketing costs, your admin costs, your travel
marketing,
costs, stuff like that, operation costs, anything that's used to kind of buy a deal should be borrowed. And if the deal's too skinny to pay someone interest, it's generally not a very good deal anyway. So I'd rather build those credit lines and borrow the money to.
That's music to my ears to hear that. I feel the exact same way. And what's interesting is the wealthier people you talk to, you know what I mean? The wealthier people you get, it's just a known thing. You know what I mean? It's kind of a mindset shift when you're used to kind of using your own money for everything. But everybody, like the higher you get up on the food chain, like has leverage, right? Leverage is something, it's either somebody else's money or like you're like saying like a line of credit, there's something where you're de-risking, right? You're de-risking and you're leveraging other people's money. For us, what that did when we moved to that was just the ability to scale, because the days on market, carrying inventory and the days on market on the sell side was what crippled us. Was no matter how much you have liquid, if you get any good at acquisitions, you're going to spend it. You're going to spend it all. I mean, you got $1 million sitting. It's easy to spend that once you get good at acquisitions and you start focusing on bigger deals. Then you're sitting on this inventory, sitting on your hands, waiting for it to move. So I think to keep things going, you really do have to look at it like operationally, administrative, and then mainly marketing. Like for us, marketing is our biggest expense. And I want it to be. Like it should be in QuickBooks our number one expense, because we've got to focus on the right things if marketing is our number one expense. But years ago when I started, property acquisition, right? Buying properties was by far the leading expense. But we got to a point, Colin, where it hamstrung us so much. But I think private lenders, like you're saying, that's critical. Even professional funders, funding companies like myself and the company we own, the challenge with that is, I would say, is like, you have a company, you have a team, you have costs, right? There's no way you can lend capital as cheap as a private lender who's essentially maybe got a HELOC, an IRA, a life insurance plan, something, right? Where they can very passively give you, who knows, 8 to
they're
50.
happy with 1% a month and no fees. And
Exactly. So I think that's a really good tip to people to start working on that, start building that, and start looking out for that, because it doesn't just fall in your lap. Like you earned it with your other business, but you've maintained those relationships. And I assume by always paying them back and keeping your word is why when you said land,
I've had deals where they've earned far more than me. I mean, not every deal is a home run. I sold a deal, I don't mind, like last month for $175,000. It took me well over a year to sell it. I had to pay someone more than $20,000 in interest. My net profit was about $3,000. It was a terrible deal. I thought I was going to sell it for like $280,000, but I was wrong. Again, I didn't lose my shirt. I made something on it, but my private lender made nearly 10 times what I made, and I was happy to pay him back. I was happy to get rid of that particular deal. But it's very common for people in the early stages to, like, you'll never get out of the hustle phase unless you start borrowing to accumulate your assets. But there's a big but, and that's like you need to know your operational costs. You need to be paying. If you're not paying, number one, if you're not paying yourself a fixed salary, it's not a real business. So your salary, your assistant salary, your marketing costs, your admin costs, you need to know what that number is. And let's say it's $20,000 a month. You need at least $60,000 in your operational account at all times. Ideally, 3 months worth, ideally 6 months worth. And after that, you make sure you're escrowing your taxes on the profits from those deals. Put 20% of whatever your deal is into a tax escrow account. You don't want to get stuck for an $80,000 tax bill that you hadn't prepared for. And then you might have some reserves afterwards. And if you have a high reserve account because you're making so much money, you can pay yourself nice bonuses from those. But you have that 60,000 in your operational account. And once lenders see that you have that kind of structure, that you've got 3 to 6 months reserves, that you're on top of your overheads, that you have a reserve account and a tax escrow account, they're going to be comfortable lending you money that's secured on a decent deal. So, and you shouldn't feel guilty about borrowing money from friends and family that can afford it, as long as you're giving them a first position lien on it, and as long as you've got your paperwork in order. But if you want to get out of that hustle phase where it's always feast or famine, and some months you feel rich and some months you feel poor, that's the kind of discipline you need to have.
No, you're exactly right. You've got to treat it as a business, run it like a business. And maybe you just already knew, did you just already know some of that stuff from that running the house flipping business, having partners? For me, it was, I read Profit First, the book, and that kind of changed my perspective on having those rules. Like you said, kind of having like an escrow account for taxes that we would set aside with every deal, where we'd say like profit, right? And we would kind of put it in different buckets. For me, the book Profit First talks about like using one operational account as like a cash salad. And that's what I was guilty of, because I was just starting and I hadn't ran a business for me. So knowing that like, okay, I need to set aside so much, for taxes, for owner pay, our profit, our operations, our marketing, that changed a lot for me, because I looked at it with every deal and we carved that up and set it aside, versus just basically pushing all the chips back in every time.
It hurts, and when you start doing it, but you'll quickly see the structure after a few months. And I didn't figure it out myself. I mean, at all. I mean, I was pretty green, at one stage for our first few dozen flips. I was very green. We didn't know what we were doing. I've been surprised and shocked with tax bills that have arrived that I haven't prepared for. I've been through that, personal tax bills and business tax bills. I mean, I've gone through that stress where I've had to tell my wife, honey, I'm going to have to take a ton of money out of her account because I didn't have my together. So I'm going to have to pay these tax bills. And so I figured it out partly through messing it up and vowing not to do that again, but mostly through like hanging out and seeking out people that were further ahead of me, that had real businesses, that were 5, 6, 10 times bigger than my own, and just kind of picking their brains and figuring out their systems and operations and what I could mimic and what I didn't need to mimic. So it's more about hanging out with the right kinds of people, going to these masterminds, RIAs, and a little bit of books. There's a lot of good books. You mentioned Profit First that are instrumental in helping you with those systems. But it was I've had
I think that's really good advice too, like looking at people that are farther along than you are and essentially kind of crowdsourcing and masterminding with them of like, what does a business look like that's a couple of years ahead of mine, or even a decade right ahead of mine? What's a good segue? Where's your business at right now? Like with how many VAs are you running? What's your team size right now?
It's me and 3 VAs. So it was quite small. So I've got one guy who's like a data manager. So he finds the lists, scrubs them, sets up the direct mail, sets up the lists for the launch control, puts the properties on the websites, generally kind of tech help and kind of marketing help, creates nice videos on the dispo side. So he helps on with a bunch of stuff related to tech and marketing. I have another VA who's does lead qualifying and texting. It's kind of half and half of each. And then I have another one who does due diligence on the incoming leads and a little bit of qualifying. It's probably 3/4 due diligence, 25% qualifying, and helps me with some general administration.
And now, are the same ones that qualifying? Are they comping?
I have one girl that does the comping. So she does the comping. So a lead comes in and, it'll get qualified and comped, both. And once it's qualified and comped, then they'll schedule a call for me to talk to them. So they add, I have obviously I'm in a different time zone. I'm in Madrid, which is 6 hours ahead of Florida. So I have certain windows on my calendar that they're allowed to schedule calls for me. I'm not talking to somebody at 11 at night in Spain, or anything like that. So they'll schedule calls for me with certain people. I'll get maybe 10 or 14 calls a week scheduled. So it's a manageable amount. They'll do a lot of due diligence on others, and it works pretty well. So I'll they help me get stuff ready to buy. They help me get it sold, but I'm kind of the main bottleneck in the buying decisions, like the final negotiation on the buy side and the sell side. Actually, I have tried to get an acquisition manager a few times, and I've just I'm really bad at hiring them, or I'm really bad at identifying talent, or I'm just unlucky. But I've went through 3 or 4 acquisition managers in the last kind of 7 or 8 months. One did well for 3 months, but then she turned down, like, she was in like a $300,000 corporate job. She's decided she'd had enough of it and wanted a slower life, but she's very smart and knew a lot about real estate. So I hired her. But she just jumped back into corporate. She got an offer for another $300,000 job. So she took it. And then I had someone else who just disappeared completely after like 4 days. And then I had another guy who I hired, and then he got a higher basic salary offer from someone else that was double the basic salary I was giving him. So he quit after a week as well. And then I had someone else who just kind of completely fooled me, did an amazing interview, and then just turned out to be terrible on the phone with no empathy, no personality. It's just terrible. So, and I spent a lot of time interviewing and training these people. So, I mean, I'm good at certain things that we've been talking about. But one thing I'm not very good at is hiring people. Aside from hiring VAs, I guess I'm
well, that's,
okay
you know what,
with
honest
a few years.
acquisitions manager, whatever you want to call them, acquisitions guy, a gal, that's the toughest role. It's the last hat you should like hand over, I think, in the last, if you even do, right? Like it's the very last role I would say. And it's the one for me, like that, for our conversion rates, like regardless of how much training somebody's had in like in sales and insurance and these other industries, right? Like I've had more success as the acquisitions manager just because I know how to navigate these calls. So for me, I've let go of it a couple times and then taken it back a number of times. You're right.
I'm glad to hear you say that it's not
done,
just me, you know?
Yeah, no, absolutely. We've done it stateside and then we've tried to offshore, you know what I mean? So kind of tested it, and we've been through so many different scenarios where I remember our first one was we told the acquisitions person, okay, we'll offer up to 50%, you know, to buy these properties. And then we're starting to get all these signed contracts. I really wasn't like, we didn't have enough historical data or acquisitions yet to like know what his average offer price was. But it was pretty apparent like 2 months in, every single signed offer was at 50%. And it was just like, he wasn't even negotiating, you know what I mean? He wasn't like looking at the value of the property and then making a 37% offer because it was a low value property. Like he would just boom, default to 50%. And then I'm like, no. So then we had to kind of realize like, all right, we need to change our compensation structure to where it's more on like capturing equity. You know what I mean? To kind of incentivize them like, hey, your commission is tied to like how much equity you capture so that they don't default. So yeah, I really think that's the toughest position to train. And then as you move to a less deals per year, you know, more profit per deal, it becomes one of those positions that you can like kind of internally hang on to. Right?
Well, yeah, I've been doing like the last guy kind of quit / got pushed like at the end of December. So I've been kind of doing it myself for the last 2.5 months, and we've got some great deals in the pipeline, and I haven't been killing myself. And like I said, because I'm focusing a little more on higher value deals. I mean, if someone's going to negotiate with someone who's selling a $190,000 lot, I want that to be me. I don't want it to be some guy who's going to get 10% commission or whatever. So, you know, I want to do it. So I'm okay just doing it myself for the next couple of quarters. Maybe I'll revisit it down the line, because I know a lot of people that run businesses that have multiple acquisition managers and they're killing it. And I get a little bit jealous when I see them and I meet them. So I kind of ebb and flow, but realistically I could survive perfectly fine for the rest of.
I had a client on his first hire. He just found the best ever, like the best acquisitions manager ever, just crushing it. And that's, I said, I'm even jealous, right? Like your first, I mean, we didn't have to go through 3 or 4 of them, right? Very first hire is just crushing it, and based out of the Philippines, and he's able to pay, you know, really good commission, right? The arbitrage is incredible. But I'm like, trust me, this is an exception, not the rule. Not everybody, this doesn't happen for everybody. So enjoy it while it lasts, right? Before somebody else poaches them, like you said, and offers them double. So you mentioned launch control. Are you texting exclusively or primarily, or are you mailing and texting?
No, mailing and texting. So I got text. Actually, I'll tell you what I do, because I noticed, you know, most of my sellers are like in their 70s.
Yeah.
So my mailing list, and this is a change I made recently, because I'm doing about 10,000 letters a month, but they're exclusively the people that are 65 plus. Okay.
Yeah.
So that are in the you know, the land targets that I like, the different, like I'm only in Florida, but I'm all over Florida, and I'm targeting residential land at different places and different price ranges. But 65 plus are the ones that get my letters. I also text those people, but then I also text everybody. So I'm pulling let's say I want to target 2 to 5 acre lots that are $40,000 to $80,000 in 10 counties. I'll target everybody by text that owns those places, but I'm only going to send letters to the ones that are over 65. Okay?
Yeah. Yeah,
so
I would agree with that. I think that demographic, it's just so interesting. That's who checks their mail and opens every letter, I feel like. And then even for us, Colin, we really focused on cold calling, even, you know, over texting right now, because of the landlines, you know, just like you said, that demographic. If you're doing letters, you're hitting that part of it. But for me, the cold calling was, hey, I can reach all the landlines in addition. But I think that makes perfect sense, in that a lot of times when we're pulling the list, we say, hey, they've owned 5 or 10 or 12 or whatever years or more, right? But that almost naturally puts them in that demographic, right? Of
Yeah.
the age you're talking about, of that long length of ownership and not doing anything with the property.
Yeah, I mean, I do also have I will send letters to younger people if they've inherited the properties, or if I think there might be title issues, if I can see that there was a quitclaim deed done or
Yeah.
something like that, or if the transfer value is $100 or less, I will send letters to those because they might be out of state heirs that inherited land, and sometimes they can be good people to buy from, especially if they're not keeping up on the taxes. There's a good, like, you 3 or 4 siblings, one of them is paying the taxes, they're getting really annoyed about it. They're great leads to kind of target.
Yeah. Are you making any changes on, are you still just targeting like single parcel flips? Have you looked at subdivides or entitlements or anything a little bit different than your current product you've been flipping?
Yeah, I have a couple of I have one 20-acre lot where I'm in the process of negotiating with the farmers to add like a road easement, and I'll literally build a gravel road into it.
Yeah.
Which should increase the value. It should triple the value of it. I bought it for 50,000. It's worth 100 as is, but if I can get road access to it, it'll be worth 250 to 300,000. So but again, it's a long drawn out process. It's going to take a long time to negotiate with these landowners, especially when they're big farms. It's not just some regular dude that lives there. It's an out of town farm corporation. So I'm doing that. And then I do have one entitlement deal, which I'm kind of tangled up in. I closed on it 6 months ago, and I've been working on it for about a year. It's a 5-acre lot in Hernando County in Florida, in Spring Hill, which I'm in the process of getting it subdivided into 20 lots.
Oh, wow.
And I started off and I thought I knocked it out of the park because I got my engineering report done. I got like topo surveys, boundary surveys, environmental surveys, wetland surveys. I spent like $40,000-$50,000 getting all these surveys done. And then I sent out, I downloaded a list of builders from some website, sent out an email saying, hey, I've got this land that I'm getting entitled. It's going to be 20. I think I had 23 lots at that time. Who wants it? I got a signed contract pretty much straight away. I had it under contract for $250, and I had a builder lined up to buy it for $750. Literally a few months in. So I was like, this entitlement business is easy. I'm going to make $400,000 on this bad boy. And I was like patting myself on the back. But then they had like 75 days due diligence. I think they canceled on day 70 of their 75th day, because they found out roughly around the same time I found out that I thought I could get public sewer lines to the lot because all the houses around it or near it were public sewer lines. But the county demanded that I build a $500,000 pumping station in order to make it work, which completely ruins the whole deal. I was kind of going back and forth with the county. I hired a land use attorney to figure out what I could do. And even before I knew a way out, I had to decide, am I going to buy this or not? Because my runway with the owner had run out. I'd extended it twice. And last September, it was actually 9/11. It was I'm either buying this or I'm going to lose everything I've put in. So I bought it. I borrowed money to buy it. From a private lender, and I'm nearly there again. We're going to get 20 lots instead of 23. We're going to do this thing where it's shared septic systems instead of single septic. So it's a whole other convoluted, painful thing. And I'm still just trying to get like preliminary approval from the county to put these shared septic systems in, which I think I'll get in about a month. But even after I get that, and I've been messing around with this for the last, I bought it 6 months ago. I still have another 8 months of entitlement to go after I get that done. But at least in maybe 2 or 3 months' time, I'll be able to promote it again to builders as a 20-unit lot, and hopefully I'll do all right in the end. But it's my big takeaway for anyone who wants to avoid those mistakes before I put myself in that position where I'd spend $50,000 on a lot which had a huge utility issue is figure out your utilities first. Before you start getting all the engineering drawings, before you start getting all the road surveys got a road survey, and I don't even need the road survey because there's no pipes going in. I mean, it's just stupid. So, figure out the utilities first, dig really deep, get assistance from people that can help you if you need to, but spend a few $1,000s figuring out the water lines, the sewer lines, the power lines, make sure it's feasible, because if it's not, you can spend 30, because the engineers aren't going to tell you. They're just going to charge you. Well, phase 1 is this and phase 2 is that. And they'll just take the phase 1, 2, 3 money from you. They're just going through the motions. They're not necessarily nasty.
They're not
or bad,
vested. They're not vested in the
motions.
deal like you are. I would agree with that. The utilities are so important, not like with an entitlement, with a subdivide. We've dealt with that as we went into some new counties recently where we had 2 gotchas where we saw all these other minor subdivides take place and power was not brought in. Like you didn't have to bring in power, you didn't have to bring in septic, and you didn't have to put in septic, you didn't have to put in water. You could just split dirt up. You didn't have to bring in all the utilities. Okay.
Mm-hmm.
And we have the pre-application meeting with the county and everything looks good. And then we take ownership, buy it. And then now the county's saying, oh no, yeah, you have to bring power to all of the child parcels prior to marketing or reselling them. And that differs from what we were told, even with a consultant and with a meeting with the county, right, prior to closing. So yeah, you've got to triple check these utilities, because like you said, that changes the numbers. Like we can still make it work.
The opinion of the broker or the engineer or the contractor or the builder. I mean, you literally have to ring the utility person and talk to them and say,
you do. You're absolutely right.
This or not.
Yeah. And that's what we had to get quotes on this one. It was like, well, the power is currently not on that side of the highway. So we actually have to cross the highway with the power, which is, costs a little different per foot to extend power, across the highway than it does, So anyway, yeah, great tip. I think you're right. Utilities are everything. And that's anytime I step too far out of my bread and butter, I kind of get humbled with things like that. So I'm absolutely fascinated by entitlements, but I hear that over and over, right?
It's a whole step up. I mean, it's like going from flipping single family homes to like buying apartment complexes. I mean, it's a whole other level of complexity. You can make a lot of money, and I see people making money, but I've also seen a bunch of people like me make mistakes that are costly. I'm okay. I could handle the mistakes I made and absorb them. But I've seen other people that went from flipping land to doing entitlements almost cold turkey and just went bust, just ran out of money.
18 months of nothing. Yeah. And so I think you're right. I think some of that, the testing has to happen like concurrently, like keep the main thing, right?
Oh yeah.
Keep everything running and then test these other things on top of it, right?
It's tempting to say, I'll just do 2 entitlement deals a year that make me $600,000 each and I'll live like a king. I mean, I get it, but real life isn't like that. Don't give up your cash cow until you've literally finished 2 or 3 entitlement deals and have another couple in the pipeline. Then maybe you can think about it if you want. But until then, I'd advise you to keep your cash cow, keep your bread and butter going, which could be flipping land or whatever else.
Yep, I agree. So what's next for you? Have you looked at private lending or getting to that side of things, or where do you see yourself, 3-5 years from now?
I've done some private lending. Yeah, I've funded some deals for some kind of people that are, kind of newer that have got great deals. So I've funded a few of them. I've originated a bunch of owner finance notes. So I got 15 or 16 of those. Again, using some of the cash I'd built up with all the flips. I've bought owner finance notes from other people that were kind of asset rich and cash poor. So I've got some good discounted notes. So I've done a little bit of that. But I'm not trying to be a private lender. I've got some valuable deals in the pipeline. I'm just trying to execute very efficiently for the next few quarters. I'm trying to build up, I want a really strong P&L this year. I've got a lot of 6-figure deals in the pipeline, but I've seen from previous years that some of them can kind of just sit there if you're not careful. So I'm trying to aggressively be very good at executing, good at the acquisition, the dispo, the promotion, just like managing my VAs very carefully, just growing the volume of money that goes in and out of my business. I'm not trying to branch out into private lending and other things. I'm trying to get out of this entitlement deal with my shirt intact. If another entitlement deal fell on my lap, I'd be up for it, but I'd be very, very careful about the utility side of things. And I'd be very careful about allocating any serious money towards it until I was very sure of its future value.
So it's really just about executing on what you've already built, like managing what you've already built, getting more efficient, it sounds like.
Yeah, it is. It very much so. Just getting better. I'm still doing 25, 30 deals a year. And if I can do 1 or 2 entitlements or 1 or 2 strong value adds like that road easement, great. These are learning new skills, but I still have to very much focus on making the prime business very efficient kind of cash machine.
No, I love it. That takes discipline. People might not realize that, but it actually, you go, oh, I can't wait to do these other things, but it actually takes discipline when you financially get in a position where you can pursue these other things, but maybe that's not the best thing to do, right? It takes a lot of discipline.
If people had that discipline to have their 6 months of operational reserves and then the reserve account and their tax escrows, they might find that they have less money than they think to take all these gambles.
Yeah. No, you're right. It's a little bit humbling when you first go through that exercise, right? So you mentioned buying notes. Is that something you're actively doing? Like, should people reach out to you looking to sell notes or?
No, I'm good. No? I mean, I bought a bunch when I was kind of more cash rich in like 2022. and 2023. But now I'm just focused on using. So I mean, the short answer is no. I'm not trying to invest in a bunch of third party notes right now. I'm still happy to originate some of my own on properties, especially on properties that are sitting there and I can't sell. I'll offer owner finance on them to get rid of them.
Yes,
But
always,
my preferred method is just to build up cash reserves in the business. They're not currently at a level where I'm comfortable like lending excess money out, and I haven't built it up, to a place where I want it yet. So that maybe in 8 or 9 months, when I get out of a few of these deals, I might decide I have enough money under a reserve account that I can lend a couple of hundred on private lending. But I'm not there at the moment.
Yeah, we've found this little sweet spot where we're like subdividing properties that are worth like like 100 to 175, or the parent parcel's worth that, and then we subdivide it and create 4 or 5 child parcels, right? And it allows us to sell those on notes, right? They're like 15 to 20-year notes, $500 a month. You can create essentially, I mean, we'll take cash if somebody wants to buy cash, but those are originating some of those notes have been awesome for us. And we found if we keep like the child parcel under 100,000 and even maybe like under 80 or 75, it's a great spot to be in, for selling those at seller financing and have a really long note. But
if you get yourself in a place where your passive income from those notes is covering your operational costs, that's a really nice place to be.
Yeah, exactly. That's really the goal. And even that's where kind of as interest rates has went up over the last couple of years, that's been harder. It's affected everybody on the sales side, days on market, but on the like originating notes and seller financing, nobody's been beating us up on interest rate, right? Like nobody's like, oh, I don't want to pay that rate. Like everybody is like, it's a great time to be a lender, I guess I would say, right? So we're originating as many of those as we can afford to right now without, like you said, kind of becoming cash poor and leaving too much in the deals. Well, hey, anything you want to leave everybody with, Colin? I appreciate your time, man. I really feel like as I'm like hosting here, I'm actually like, I probably identified about 5 or 6 different like clips where I'm like, man, these are gold nuggets. You really gave some great advice throughout the episode.
Yeah, thank you. I don't know that I have a whole lot more to add, but just read it. People should be ambitious in the land space. Most people are capable of far more than they think, especially if you look out kind of 2+ years. But just be careful about just know your numbers. Get in the habit of knowing your monthly numbers. And once you do, then you can plan ahead and you can set yourself ambitious goals and you can go for them from a place of strength once you've built your basic foundation. So just do that. And then there's so much resources now that will help you maximize your dollars on your direct mail, on your texting, on your cold calling, on your list pulling, on your list scrubbing. I mean, the tools are there for anybody. I mean, just master them one by one. And this is an incredibly rewarding space. I mean, I've been involved in a lot of different facets of real estate in the last 20 years, but land flipping is the most exciting and the most profitable one I've been in. So I mean, I love it. I think it's great that there's all these shows out there that are helping people get started on their journey, and I'm certainly happy to help any way I can. I do chat to people most weeks about what they're up to, and I have other people that help me where I'm going. So just I mean, be resilient. Keep an eye on your numbers, and don't turn into a crazy workaholic either. I mean, there has to be a purpose that you're aiming towards. I mean, if it's whatever freedom you want to provide you and your family, I mean, just know your numbers and go for it.
Well, and I think that's something we connected on really well. Was obviously the money has to be there to cover our lifestyle, our cost of living and everything, but the freedom, right? It's freedom driven. And you've built it. That's kind of where we're at too. Like we run with a micro team. Like there's a lot of people that have way larger teams than we do, but you can accomplish a lot with a handful of VAs, and yourself being actively involved in the business and running it like a business, and I think sometimes people, they like the idea of having a large team, and I really stress
it's not always cracked up to be. I mean, I've had large teams, but I love having a small, nimble business which ebbs and flows at the pace of my lifestyle. And so the kind of lifestyle I want determines the rhythm of the business and not the other way around. And that's such a nice place to be as a business owner.
Yeah, and it's not by accident. My point is it's by design, right? You've been intentional. You've designed it this way, man. And I can appreciate that. Awesome. Hey, Colin, thanks for your time. I appreciate it. If anybody's ever in Madrid, give Colin
and you'd be surprised. I've had I've done a few podcasts in the past where I mentioned I'm in Madrid, and I do sometimes get people passing by. And as long as you're willing to come out to my neighborhood, I'm happy to meet up for breakfast.
Awesome. Well, appreciate it. Thanks for your time, Colin.
Great chatting, Travis. Appreciate it, man. Bye.
Thanks for tuning into The King Show. If you enjoyed today's episode, I'd really appreciate it if you would subscribe, rate, and review this podcast. Also, don't forget to head over to travisking.com for show notes, resources, bonus content, and more ways to connect with me and the guests that you hear on the show. Remember, greatness is already within you. It's time for you to boss up and claim it. Stop building someone else's empire and start building your own.